Welcome everybody to part 3 of our QuickBooks Online Fundamental Series. Today we're talking about managing your books with QBO, and we'll talk about some apps that are available. So I'm very glad to have you joining us. For those of you that haven't joined me for the first ones, my name is Michelle Long. I am a CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship. I'm thrilled to be an international trainer for Intuit. I have my own practice, so I'm a contract trainer for Intuit, but my business is Long for Success. If you want to check that out, subscribe to my blog. Love to have you do that. I love going around the U.S. and elsewhere helping accountants and bookkeepers learn more about QuickBooks, so I'm really glad you guys are joining me today for this fundamental series. I'm the author of 5 different books. If you want to check those out, they're all on Amazon. One in particular you might want to check out is the QuickBooks Online Practice Set. That gives you 3 months of activity to enter transactions, run reports, reconcile, check your figures, and see how you're doing and make sure that you're doing it properly, and that gives you some more experience. So you might want to check that out. Also, I'd encourage you to write this down, qbpowerhour.com. QBpowerhour.com. That's a free webinar series that Hector Garcia and myself, we have that every other Thursday. The next one's coming up next week. We're going to be talking about accounts receivable and this great third-party app called AR Collect. So we're always talking about QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, or third-party apps, or practice management topics, or marketing topics, and things like that. So I encourage you to join us for some of that. And then also check me out on the LinkedIn group, Successful QuickBooks Consultants, and the Facebook group is QB Power Hour. Those two are great resources when you have questions, want to ask questions of your peers and things like that. So I encourage you to check some of that out. All right, so this is the QuickBooks Online Fundamental Series. We've had parts 1 and 2 already. In part 1, last week we talked about working with QuickBooks Online Accountant, working with your client dashboard, monitoring your client alerts, working with team members and setting up those team members within your firm, and all that stuff with QuickBooks Online Accountant. Last time on part 2, which was yesterday, we talked about setting up the company. Once you've created your subscription in QuickBooks Online, we talked about then customizing the settings, inviting your client and other users to it. We talked about the chart of accounts, the products and services list. We went through setting up bank feeds. I talked about working with your downloaded transactions and setting up bank rules and everything. So all of that was, kind of setting up and getting started yesterday. Today in part 3, what we're going to be talking about is actually managing your books with QuickBooks Online, as well as some apps that are available. So today we're going to be talking about actually like the transactions and the workflow. We're going to go through the money in, the sales and accounts receivable, making deposits. We'll talk about money going out with purchases and expenses. We'll talk about payroll. We'll talk a little bit about reports. Again, we're going to talk about those apps that are available. And then I'm also going to share with you some great navigating tips when you're working with QuickBooks Online. So we've got a lot of material to cover over the next hour and a half, so I'm glad you're joining me for this. Again, this is the fundamentals training. The next step for you would be the certification prep. And it's going to go through and it's going to review some of the same things that we covered in this fundamental series, but it's also going to have some more information for you. It's focusing on what you need to pass that certification test so that you can become a certified pro advisor. Then there's also the advanced certification prep. Even if you're not quite ready to take that test yet, I encourage you to get out there and check out those materials, the training resources that are available, because there's a lot of good information that will help you working with your clients. And in part 1 of this series, we went into the pro advisor area and I showed you how to access all these training materials and everything. So if you missed part 1, that webinar is available, that recording's available, and I will be posting these on my YouTube channel as well. I didn't get it done last night, but if you subscribe to Michelle Long CPA, so it's youtube.com/Michelle Long CPA, all one word. Subscribe and you can find them there if you can't find them through the Intuit Intuit site. Okay, so our CPE process for today is you must attend the webinar for the full time and answer the polling questions. I'm going to have 4 polling questions throughout the webinar today at various times, and you need to answer those polling questions to be eligible for up to an hour and a half of CPE. And then their CPE certificate will be emailed to you within 3 weeks after today to the same email address that you used to register. Make sure you check your spam folder if you don't see it, but mark something on your calendar to double check for 3 weeks from today. So this is a little bit about our learning objectives for today. I just kind of covered what we're going to be talking about with purchases and sales and payroll. We'll talk about month-end procedures like reconciling and running some reports and things like that. So let's go ahead and get right into some of this. We're going to be demonstrating things most of the time. I'm going to be in QuickBooks Online the vast majority of the time. You all have these slides. I'm skipping the slides to go right into QuickBooks most of the time. There might be a few slides that I'll share with you. But one thing I would note to you, if you're following the slides start with expenses and purchases, but I'm going to start with sales. So I'm just going to do it a little bit out of order. I like money coming in before the money's going out. And then we'll talk about the mobile and the desktop apps, next steps, and then we'll have Q&A. I will try to allow some time at the very end for some additional Q&A, but again, thank you to all of our Intuit helpers that are answering questions while I'm going throughout this webinar. So you can go ahead and type them in there, and they will be answering those as we go along, and I'll answer some of those verbally as we do our poll questions. So let's go ahead and get right into the QuickBooks Online demonstration. And again, what I'm doing is covered in the guide for you. So you should be able to download the guide in the handouts there on the GoToWebinar toolbar, or here's a link on the slides where you can download that supplemental guide as well. Okay? So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into QuickBooks Online. Let me get into the right one. Okay, so by the way, before I get into it, let me just remind you, I showed you this in part 1 in the first webinar of the series, how to access that sample company. That's what I'm going to be using again today. So I am in QuickBooks Online Accountant. I see my client dashboard and my green bar across the top. In QuickBooks Online Accountant, if you click on the big gear in the upper right corner, so the gear in the upper right corner, right on the far right column, you'll see where it says Sample Company. That's where you can log into the sample company, Craig's Design and Landscape, so that you can play around and do whatever you want to do. And whenever you log out of that or close out, it will reset itself, so it doesn't save anything. So you can go in here and do a lot of testing and playing around with this to get familiar with it. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working with. So for some of you that are new, first of all, let's talk about just some general navigation things with QuickBooks Online. We've got our left navigation bar, which takes us into our centers, like the Customer Center, the Vendor Center, our employees. Under Transactions, you'll see we have Banking, Sales and Expenses, Chart of Accounts, and then we've got Reports. And then this is your Tax Center. If I had Payroll turned on, I would see Taxes. Click on that, and then I would see Sales and Payroll Taxes. So this is your left navigation bar. If you want to collapse that left navigation bar, you see these 3 little lines just to the right of Accountant? Those 3 little lines will collapse or expand your left navigation bar. So those 3 little lines collapse or expand that left navigation bar. Then the little briefcase up here, that will give us our accountant tools, and you'll learn more about those in the certification prep. These accountant tools are only available when we're logged in as the accountant user. We know we're logged in as the accountant when we see accountant in the upper right, upper left corner up here where it says accountant. So those accountant tools are covered in the certification prep. Then also, this is the client switcher. And I'm in the sample company, so it just says back to your practice. But if I were in a real company, like let me go over here and get into like Castle Construction, for example. If I click on Castle Construction, now you'll see this is my client switcher. So once I've opened a client company, this will allow me to log in and out of my various clients. All right, so that's your client switcher. When you click on that company name there, I can switch in and out between the clients that I need. Then as you go all the way across over here to the right side on the top bar, you'll see the search. And in that search box, I can type in a dollar amount, a check number, for example. I can type in something I'm searching for specifically, you know, like, if you're looking for a report, you could even type that in there. And if you have details that you want to search for, down in the bottom right of that search, do you see where it says Advanced Search? down in the bottom right there, you'll see where it says Advanced Search. That's where you can go in and really filter and search. And you can even search by line item detail. Like if you're putting information on the memo line of an invoice, let's say, you can search even by line item. So that's really a great search box. Then this is the Quick Create menu. And we're going to be going through this throughout the day today, talking about these different transactions. So the Quick Create allows you to create any type of transaction, posting or non-posting. It also allows you to print your checks out here, to run statements, do an inventory adjustment. So this is generally for all of your transactions, plus you can print checks and run your statements from there too. We talked about the big gear some yesterday. So the big gear, this is where we went through the accountant settings, which is kind of like editing your preferences in QuickBooks Desktop. And so we went through some of these yesterday. We talked about managing users. We talked about customizing your form styles for invoices and such. We talked about your chart of accounts. I didn't really mention QuickBooks Labs. So let me go ahead and tell you what QuickBooks Labs is. What QuickBooks Labs is this allows you to go try out some new things that Intuit is kind of testing out, and they haven't pushed them out as an update yet. For example, that left navigation bar collapsing, that was in QuickBooks Labs for a while, but now everybody has the ability to collapse and expand that left nav bar because it's been pushed out as an update. So for example, here's the new reconciliation screens that they're working on. If you wanted to go ahead and turn that on, you could, so that you can kind of play with it. Now, if you encounter any bugs or anything, because again, they're testing it out before they push it out to everybody, you can just come back in here and turn it off again. You can import some styles for your invoices. Here's company templates for accountants. Let's say you have a lot of service-based businesses and you want to create a template so you can set them up easier and faster next time. You can turn on the company templates and stuff. Then if somebody's using pay by coin, you could turn that on and kind of play around with that as well. So that's your QuickBooks Labs. All right, so we also talked about your lists yesterday, the tools. You'll be going over more of these, working with the certification prep. So let's go ahead and get into the detail now on our transactions, on entering transactions and things. So we're going to start with money coming in from our customers. So I'm going to click on an estimate because some people will need to do estimates. If you or your clients don't need estimates, you may skip that and you may just start with an invoice or a sales receipt. But I'm going to go ahead and create an estimate. So I'm going to choose estimate. I'm going to choose the first name on the list, Amy's Bird Sanctuary. And I want you to notice that you can include the status of an estimate. And you can come in and change this manually, or as soon as you turn an estimate into an invoice, it will change it to a closed status. But you could come in and mark it accepted. You could come in and mark it rejected, or you could manually close it yourself if you needed to. So you come on down here. You're going to put in what the estimate is for. So let's say it's gardening, and I got 5 hours at $50 an hour, and maybe I need some installation of something, and let's put that on there. And let's say that's going to take 3 hours, and let's make it something different, $750. So you can go through and do your estimate out here. You can put a message down in the bottom corner. You know, call us to let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. You can put a memo. You can attach things to this estimate. If you want to take a picture of what it's going to look like, let's say in this gardening example, maybe you want to take a picture of the bushes that are going to be put in or whatever. So you can attach things if you need to. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do save and close here. So I'm just going to save and close. So I've created my estimate. Now presumably Amy says, yes, you know, it's great, I want you to do the work, and we went out and we actually did the work. We maybe had a few changes, but the next step in the process would be to invoice Amy for that. So I'm going to click on the plus again for my Quick Create, and I'm going to choose Invoice. Now, as soon as I choose Amy's name up here, I want you to watch what happens from the right side of my screen. So when I click on Amy, watch from the right side of my screen, it slides out, and it says Add to Invoice. These are all things that I may want to add to an invoice. So you can see I might want to add time if I had billable time, or some estimates that I've got here. You might have some billable expenses as well. So here's what I've got for this one, is just an estimate and time. Now in order to see this estimate and add and copy it onto my invoice, yesterday when we went through the company settings, I told you how under the sales settings you have to check the box that says copy the estimate to an invoice. So you have to turn that on basically in your company settings. And then I can copy this estimate to an invoice by just clicking Add. And it will add those lines of my estimate that I just created right here on my invoice. If I needed to make some changes, like let's say the installation wound up taking 5 hours because she decided she wanted a rock fountain as well, so you can change things as needed after you put it on an invoice. I can add to it, change it, whatever I need to do. So again, you can go through here and you can put some notes on there. You can add attachments, whatever. And then I have several options when it comes time to save it. Notice there's a save button there, and then there's also save and send, save and new, save and close, save and share the link. If you've turned on QuickBooks Payments, so if you signed up for QuickBooks Payments so you could get paid by ACH transfer or an e-check or a credit card, then you can do the save and send and the save and share the link, and the customers or the clients can click that to pay online. So I just love that. Now, another thing I wanted to point out to you, see where it says save and close, and in the light kind of colored over there on the right side, do you see that Control-Alt-D? It's kind of grayed out or a little bit lighter, the Control-Alt-D next to save and close. We do have keyboard shortcuts with QuickBooks Online. If you hit Control-Alt question mark, Control-Alt question mark, this will bring up your keyboard shortcuts for you. So this will allow me, so you can see you do Control-Alt-I for an invoice, Control-Alt-W for write checks, Control-Alt-E for an estimate, and so on. And over here, you've got shortcuts for save and close, save and new, save and send. So these keyboard shortcuts allow us to keep our hands on the keyboard, so we don't have to keep going over to the mouse all the time. So what I did is I had this keyboard shortcut screen here, and I had this on another screen, which I'll show you how to do that. Or you could print screen and print this out yourself, and then you would have this available. Or if you Google long for success QuickBooks shortcuts, you'll find a blog post with these shortcuts, the date shortcuts, and a link to a video that I did on navigating tips and tricks. So search long for success QuickBooks keyboard shortcuts, and you'll find that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, though. I will be using the menus here because I know you guys can't see what keys I'm hitting. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Save and Close. Now, what happens after I enter that invoice? I send the invoice to Amy, and she gets the invoice, and hopefully she does what? Hopefully she pays, right? So that would be the next step in the process, would be receive my payment. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Receive Payment, and that's going to pop up. Now, when I select Amy, it's going to pull up the open invoice that I had for her down here. So I could go ahead and select the invoice that I received, and I could actually go over it if she didn't pay me in full. Let's say she only paid half. No problem. I could go under that. Now, also, when you're getting paid, you probably need to enter the payment method. So I may want to put in that she paid by check, and it was number 456. And then how do I want to deposit it? Is this check going directly into the checking account all by itself? Or am I going to take the check from Amy and 2 or 3 other customers and deposit those 3 checks as one deposit? If you're going to group checks together to make one deposit, just like with QuickBooks Desktop, we need to go through undeposited funds. So I'm going to put this into undeposited funds because I want to deposit it with a couple of other checks in one deposit. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close because I'm done with that. So I've received payments all day long. Now it's the end of the day. What do I need to do? Go to the bank and make that deposit. So on the plus side, you'll find your deposit under the Other column in the Quick Create menu. It's under Other because your deposits could be from lots of things, not just customers. You could have a deposit from a vendor who gave you a refund. Maybe the owner put money into the business. There's a variety of reasons. So these up here at the very top where it says Select Existing Payments, these are the payments that I entered, like the one from Amy, and I put it into undeposited funds because I wanted to group those 3 checks together to make one deposit. So they go into undeposited funds when I receive the payment. Now when I'm making the deposit, I'm taking them back out of undeposited funds. So it's clearing itself out, and then it groups them together so I can make one bank deposit here so it will match my bank statement when I'm reconciling. If you've got money that's not from a customer or a client or a donor or whatever, it's not from your customers, you're going to put that under add new deposits, like vendor refunds or rebates, like deposits from the owner. Maybe they sold an asset, maybe they got a bank loan and they got a check for $10,000 for a bank loan. Any money that's not from customers, you could add down here. So like, let's say, for example, Ellis Equipment Rental sent me back a $200 check because I overpaid or they overcharged me or something. So I could come in here and put in a refund or a rebate from a vendor. Okay, so I'm doing Ellis Equipment Rental and I'm taking it back out of that equipment rental expense account where I initially recorded it. All right, so then you go ahead and record that deposit, and I'm going to go ahead and do save and close. So that was the workflow where you create the invoice and you get paid later. So it's going into accounts receivable, and I'm creating an invoice, and then I'm receiving payment. However, if Craig goes out and mows the grass today and does the yard and everything, and he says, okay, you know, that's going to be $50 or $100, and they pay him at the time of the sale, then you would be entering that as a sales receipt. So I'm going to go ahead and click on sales receipt. And before I talk about this, I need to launch a poll question. All right, I forgot about this. So let's do our first poll question. So this is our first poll question. Go ahead and answer that poll question for me if you need continuing professional education credits. Can you have more than one estimate to populate an invoice? Kim, that's a really good question, but no, at this time, it's one-to-one, one estimate to an invoice. But there is a new feature. Well, it's not that new. The last few months, I don't know, it's 6 months maybe. You can now, in addition to copying the estimate to an invoice, you can also copy the estimate to a purchase order. Again, that's something that you would have to turn on in the account and settings area. So you'd want to make sure you check the box so that you can copy an estimate to a purchase order. Okay? Why can you only deposit 18 checks at a time? James, I would assume that's because that's all the deposit slips can lift at a time. So you may just need to break that into 2 deposits if you've got more than 18 checks. Okay? If I receive it into the bank account, can't I download that as a cash receipt? Stu, you could. So let's say you're not grouping it with anything else. It's just that one check. Instead of doing the receive payments and make deposit, you could theoretically do that. However, unless that's the way it works all the time, I usually recommend people do the same process all the time, just so they get used to doing it one way. So if occasionally you put it directly to the checking account, but most of the time you're getting more than one check and you're grouping them together to make your deposit, then I recommend the workflow be the invoice, receive the payment, make the deposit, just so you've got the workflow and you do the same thing all the time. So you do need to do what works best for you or your clients depending on how they operate. So I'm showing you, you know, I'm going to show you different methods, and you choose the method that's right for you or your clients based on their business and how they operate. All right, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to answer that poll question. So if you need CPE, go ahead and do that. Somebody says, I'm new in QuickBooks. I don't have the software. How can I practice? Michelle, you can get that sample company. All you got to do is just Google QuickBooks Online Test Drive, and you'll find the link for it. But if you're going to be working with multiple clients, and I guess that wasn't Michelle, that was Maria. If you're going to be working with multiple clients as an accounting professional, I encourage you to go ahead and sign up for the QuickBooks Pro Advisor Program. It's free for accounting professionals, and you get the QuickBooks Online accounting software, so you could do that. Somebody says, can QBO access through a cell phone? Absolutely. And Richard, you're right. The person in the salesperson in the field could generate a sales receipt in the field on a portable printer. Richard, they don't even need a portable printer. They can email that sales receipt directly to the customer, and they can get paid. They can have something they plug into their phone or integrates with their phone so they can accept credit cards in the field as well. So there is a mobile app which is free with the QuickBooks subscription, and I'm going to cover that at the very end today. We're going to talk about the mobile app and the desktop app. So those are available out there. So it is great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll question, and I'll go ahead and share the results with you quickly. 28% of you are pretty new to QuickBooks. 19% have only worked with desktop. 30% have played around a little bit, and 23% do work with clients in QuickBooks Online. All right, well, great. Very good. Okay. Okay, so when we're entering a sales receipt, we're bypassing accounts receivable because I'm entering the sale down here, the products and services that sold, and I'm also entering the payment right here because I'm getting the payment at the time of sale. So it skips accounts receivable. So instead of 2 steps, enter an invoice and then receive payment, I do it in one step. I create that sales receipt. But it looks the same as an invoice and basically as an estimate. You got the same concept there. Then sometimes you might have to refund your customers money or give them a credit. You have 2 different options. If you're going to give them a credit on their account, which they can use towards a current invoice or a future invoice, then that would be a credit memo. If, on the other hand, you're going to refund them their money, that would be a refund receipt. All right, so depending on how you're going to give them that credit or that refund, you do one of those 2. Then we also have what's called delayed charges and delayed credits in QuickBooks Online. In this example, and I mentioned this the other day, but let's say Craig goes out and he mows the grass every single week. He could enter that as a delayed charge each week when he mows the grass. And a delayed charge is a non-posting transaction, so it's not going to impact his profit and loss or any of his reports. Then at the end of the month, when he creates an invoice, he can add all those delayed charges onto that invoice at one time. You might have attorneys that want to do that for time that they're working on a case throughout the month, and then they invoice at month end. So those are delayed charges and credits, and they're both non-posting transactions. Now, after we've entered some of the sales and information, let's go ahead and look at our customer center because this is where you're going to see all the details for those customers. We've got our money bar going across the top with things that are unbilled, like estimates, and unbilled time or expenses under unbilled activity, or delayed charges would be in there as well. Unpaid is where we have overdue invoices and open invoices. And then on the far right, the green is where we have paid, recently paid invoices in the last 30 days. So if I were to click on the overdue box, let's say, this would show me, it would filter my customer list and only show me the 10 overdue invoices that I have outstanding. So at a glance, I can see my overdue invoices. And this is part of what I love about QuickBooks Online. I could click the box here to select all of these customers with overdue invoices, and then I could do a batch create statements, or I could batch email them all at once. So I think that's really handy to be able to follow up with all of the overdue invoices in one fell swoop here. So that's kind of handy to be able to do that. Now, to get back to all of my customers, I can click clear, and that will bring me back to all customers. If I wanted to, over here on the right at the top of this customer list, see where I can print this list? I could export it to Excel, and then here's what we call the grid gear or the baby gear. So here's that little grid gear. This is where I can see address, email, attachments, so you can choose if you want to add those additional fields on here so you can see more information. Also, do you want to include inactive customers, and then on the rows, how many rows do you want to see at a time? So you can go through and kind of change how you want to see that just a little bit. Okay. All right, so then if I went into Amy, so if I click on Amy's name, it's going to take me into the detail for Amy, and this is where I can see all of that customer's activity. And I could click on any of these column headings to sort by that heading, depending on what you're looking for. You can sort it by date, by type, by amount, whatever you can choose. You can filter it by status. So you can kind of choose how you want to filter these things depending on what you're looking for. And then you could go in here and do some batch actions as well. If you wanted to print the transactions or the packing slips, send them or send a reminder. So you've got these batch actions as well. And then you can also filter. Let's say you just want to see the invoices. You could do that as well. Then if you wanted to see your customer details, right here is the customer detail page, where if you wanted to go in and edit, change their phone number or their address or something like that. If you wanted to include attachments on your customer, let's say you wanted to have the agreement where they signed the agreement for whatever work you were going to do. You can have that signed agreement there under attachments. So that's where you get into your details. So this is working with your customer list. And then also we have what's called the Sales Center. So under Transactions on the left navigation bar, okay, so Transactions on the left navigation bar in Sales, this is where I would get to all of my sales types of transactions. And so I could filter out here, and this is where you'll see all of the various types of things that I could filter by, including recently paid, money received. You know, if I wanted to see just money received, kind of like a cash receipts journal, I could go in there and filter this and kind of get a quick report from this. So it's kind of helpful. Now, here's a good question from Kim. How would you handle deposits for work not yet done or invoices not yet generated? Kim, there's actually 3 different options. So you're kind of talking about working with deposits or prepayments or retainers. And there's 3 options for how you could do that. You can receive the money and leave it as a credit on the account and apply it later. You could put it as a deposit on the invoice, or you could set an unearned liability account up and do it that way. So all 3 of those methods and the pros and cons and when you might want to use one or the other are covered in Section 3 of the Advanced Cert materials. Okay, so Section 3 of the Online Advanced Certification, which you can access as a Pro Advisor, Module 3 will cover those. So you can go in, pull up that PDF guide, maybe listen to the recording, and go through those various options, decide which one's right for your client. That's definitely not a fundamentals question, but it is a good question. Okay, back to, so this is our sales center. So we've kind of talked all about sales. One last thing I want to make sure I point out to you on the sales. Don't enter sales or mini transactions. Don't enter these things directly into a register. You want to use the forms that are provided. There's different ways that you can get into those. I mentioned that quick create menu where you can access all of those transactions, but also like here in the sales center, if I see like here's an invoice, over here to the far right, my next step would be to receive payment. So I could do that right there. I could come up here under new transactions in the upper right corner, and I could go in there and enter a transaction from there. In your customer center, you also can enter transactions from here, like over here next to Amy, it says receive a payment because she's got a balance due. On Cool Cars, there's no balance due, so my next step might be to create an invoice. So there's various ways that you can do that, but don't go enter things into the register. Always try to use the forms whenever possible. Now, one more thing I want to point out to you. Let's say I want to go back in and look at that invoice that I just created. If you click on this search box up here in the top right corner, this will show you recent transactions. Here's the estimate we just did. There's the invoice and the payment and the deposit. So if I wanted to open the invoice, I could just go ahead and click this up here. All right, so I could go ahead and click to open this invoice. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out to you here is when you're in an invoice, look in the left, the right corner, or when you're in a transaction, any transaction, look in the upper left, the upper right corners of that transaction, and also in the meat of that transaction. So in this example, here you'll see for invoices it says one linked transaction. Here's the estimate. Let's say I wanted to open that estimate up. If I wanted to open it in a new tab or a new window, I could right-click, open this link in a new tab. That's going to open that in a new window for me up here. Over here in the upper right, see where it says one payment? This is where if I wanted to see that payment, I can just click the link, or if I want it in a new tab or a new window, I can right-click, open this link in a new tab. So in QuickBooks Desktop, we had Open Windows List, and I loved it. When I first started using QuickBooks Online, I hated it because I thought I could only have one window open at a time. That's not true. What we need to learn is tabbed browsing. Our open windows are going across the top on our tabs, if you will. So notice here's an invoice, here's an estimate, here's received payment. If I wanted to open a report up in here, let's close that. Let's just go into reports real quickly, and let's open a profit and loss. Now I've got a profit and loss open. If I wanted to see this profit and loss on another window or another monitor here, I can click the tab name up here, drag and drop it. That will pull it out. Then I could take it over, and I don't really want to take it to my second monitor because then you guys can't see it. But here you can see I've got an estimate open here in this window, and I've got my profit and loss in this window. Let's say I wanted to, let's close this estimate, and let's say I wanted to open the balance sheet in another window. Reports, balance sheet. There's my P&L. See if I can find the balance sheet. It's a smaller window because I'm trying to do them both on the same one here. So it's making it a little harder. Let's just open the AR aging summary. There's it. Let's just do that. So there you can see I've got multiple reports in multiple windows. So this is called tabbed browsing. All right, you can do this in any browser, but Chrome is the recommended browser, or Firefox. Don't use Internet Explorer. It's evil. Just don't use that. It just doesn't work right sometimes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the second poll question. Since I was a little late on the first one, let's go ahead and do that second one for you. Which one of these, how do you identify yourself? Are you a CPA, EA, bookkeeper, QBO consultant, or other? What did you do to open the invoice? Okay, so to open the invoice on another tab, any time you want to open something in another tab, you can right-click on it, open in a new tab. Right-click on it, open in a new tab. Or if you're like me and you like to just click one time, click on the link with the scroll bar of your mouse, and that will open it in a new tab with one click for you. Okay, so I think that's great. So somebody's wanting to know about links to the Facebook page and the blog. So if you go to my if you go to my website, long4success.com, there you will find links to, or you'll find the blog. It's long4success.com/blog. But the LinkedIn group is there. The Facebook QB Power Hour group is not on there yet. But if you go to Facebook and search QB Power Hour, you will find that there. Okay, so hopefully that will help a little bit. Does the tabbed browsing work on the app for Mac? The app is different, okay? The desktop app I'm going to talk about at the very end today, it is different. You can have windows open, multiple windows open in it, but it works differently than the tabbed browsing that I'm showing you here. So if you're working with the desktop app, it is different, okay? All right. I'm going to go ahead and close. I'm going to give you 10 seconds on that poll. If you need CPE credit, please go ahead and answer that quickly. Go ahead and answer that poll question there, and you'll be able to get that. All right. Somebody says, who is classified as an enrolled agent? You have to go through a test and a procedure. So there's actually a test that you have to take to pass to become an enrolled agent. So it's kind of rigorous to pass that, to become an enrolled agent. It's too hard for me. I'm a CPA, not an EA. I don't know those tax laws. All right, so we got a good number of CPAs, bookkeepers, and other. Well, very good. I'm glad to have you guys all joining me today, especially now that we're in busy season. It's great to see you taking time out to join me. Okay, so we talked a little bit about a few navigating tips with the tabbed browsing. Let me go ahead and show you a couple of other navigating tips, and then we'll move into the purchases and vendors. So we talked about your tabbed browsing up here. We talked about how you want to link or click on links to open linked transactions. So for example, on this payment, down here in the body or the meat of the transaction is where you'll see the link to that invoice. So always look for blue links. Anywhere you see these blue links, that takes you to a linked transaction. That's where you can right-click on any link and open it in a new tab. Also, one of the other things I wanted to point out to you, I showed you how in the search box you could see all the recent transactions that you've entered. But when you have a transaction open, like right now I'm in a deposit, in the upper left corner, we don't have the forward and backwards buttons where you can scroll through them, or previous and next. But what we do have is this recent transactions button, kind of the backwards looking clock. This will show me all of my recent deposits, and I could click on any one of those to go into it. Same thing if I've got an invoice open, or here's a payment. I've got a payment open. This would show me recent payments. So whatever transaction type you have opened, that will show you recent transactions like that type. Also on the tabbed browsing, it's opening any link. So if I wanted to open the vendor center in a new window, right-click, open this link in a new tab. That will open it right up here. Now you're going to see we've got the vendor center up here in a new tab. If I wanted to open, the employees, I could also click my scroll bar, and with one click of the scroll bar, it opens that in a new tab or a new window up here. So this is called your tabbed browsing. Okay. Now, so that was one of the things I loved about QuickBooks Desktop was my open windows list. The other thing I loved about QuickBooks Desktop was the icon bar. I loved using the icon bar across the top where I could get one-click access and I could customize it to the things that I did most. So I had one-click access to everything, and I really loved that. So let's say, for example, I want to go into my chart of accounts. Well, I could come over here and click on Transactions, Chart of Accounts, and I could open it that way. But that's 2 clicks. I got to click on Transactions, click on Chart of Accounts. Or I could click on the gear, click on Chart of Accounts. That's 2 clicks. That's 1 click too many. I want 1 click access to these things, right? So this is where I figured this out one night because, you know, I was like, if I'm going to use QBO, I have to figure out how I can get my bookmark bar or my icon bar. And I finally did. And it was so funny because I figured this out. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was up in my office working, and I was like, figured out I could click this, and bam, 1 click, it would open the chart of accounts. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. My husband comes running, and he's like, what's the matter, what's the matter? I'm like, look what I can do. He's like, are you kidding me? I got to work tomorrow. Close your door. I was so excited. 1 click, and it will open these things for me. I love this. So also, like if I'm going to go into Reconcile, I normally have to click the gear, come under here and Reconcile. Again, that's 2 clicks. I don't want to do that. I can put on my icon bar, Reconcile, and with 1 click access, it will open that for me. So again, I can have 1 click access. This is called a bookmark bar. Okay, this is called a bookmark bar. So I know what you're asking. How do I do that? Let's say I am in, let's go into something different. Let's go into like the sales center. So let's say I'm here in my sales center and I want to bookmark this. In the upper right corner of your URL box, way at the end of that URL, do you see the star? And I'm showing you how to do it in Chrome. This is going to be a little bit differently in your other browsers, but I recommend you use Chrome, and I'm going to tell you why in just a second. You click this star, and that's going to bookmark it. Now, I don't want sales transactions. That's too long, so I'm going to just say sales, and you can see it's adding this bookmark right here on my bookmark bar. So I'm going to go ahead and click sales. So I have these bookmarks, and the best thing of all, they will work for whatever client company I open. So if I were to come in here and open a different client and switch into another client, my sales would work, my reconcile would work, my chart of accounts would work, because these are generic URLs, chart of accounts. So whichever client you have open, your bookmarks will work, with one exception. If I open a specific register, so let's say I'm opening my check register here. Notice on the URL box up at the top, it says account ID 35. So the checking account might be 35 for client A, it might be 25 for client B, it might be 30 in another client. So the account ID is going to be different. So the bookmarks on a specific account won't work from one client to the next. So what I do is I bookmark my chart of accounts instead of the check register, because that's going to work better for me. Now, the other thing that's helpful is you can rearrange these. So like if you wanted to put them in order of what your client needs to do, let's get that one out of the way. Let's say you want them to, do the deposit and then they reconcile. Maybe you want them to look at their check register. You can put these bookmarks in order by dragging and dropping and rearranging them. How cool is that? You can create workflow for them up there. So that's pretty cool. Now, one of the things that you might want to do is have more than one company open. You can have more than one company open with multiple users in Chrome. So for example, you can see I've got all these users for Chrome. So down here on the bottom, on my toolbar down at the bottom, can you see I have a Chrome puppy dog user? That's my normal web browsing. My happy face user is when I'm in QuickBooks Online, and my martini glass user is I use it for QuickBooks Online Accountant. So I can have more than one QuickBooks company open at the same time. So you also then can have a separate bookmark bar for each one. So when I'm in the QBO user, this happy face user, this bookmark bar is just for QuickBooks. I use the happy face user just for QuickBooks. So when I clear the cache and cookies, it doesn't mess up anything else that I'm doing. Also, I don't have a bunch of extensions or add-ons here with Chrome that could conflict with QuickBooks. I use this just for QuickBooks. My my happy face users. So how do you create users? You click on the Chrome menu in the upper right corner at the far end of that URL box. When you click on the Chrome menu and you go under Settings, under the Chrome menu and Settings, scroll down a little bit. This is where you're going to see people. You click Add a Person, and that will allow you to add an additional person so that you can have multiple Chrome users. Okay, so I highly recommend this. And so each one of these, I can have a QuickBooks company open in each one of them at the same time. You cannot have multiple users and separate bookmark bars and all this that I just talked about with Firefox or some of the other browsers. So only Chrome allows us to have multiple users and to do some of that. So I think that's pretty super cool. I hope you guys liked it too. And there is a URL link that they can share with you on how to go back and do some of those navigating shortcuts and tips and tricks. But let's go ahead and go back in, and we were going to talk about our vendors and purchases, money going out. So I'm going to click on my Quick Create button up here again, and we have our vendors area here. Let's start with accounts payable, where we're going to enter a bill and pay a bill. So I'm going to go ahead and click on a bill here. Let's go into enter this bill. I'll choose Bob's Burger Joint because he's at the top. And let's pretend we're paying Bob for some advertising because he's going to put our ad on the back of his receipts so his customers will see it every time. Now, one thing I wanted to mention to you, for accounts payable, you have to have QBO Essentials. If you want to enter bills and pay bills, you have to have Essentials or Plus. It's not available in Simple Start. It's also not available in Self-Employed. Also, if I wanted to make this billable to a particular customer, I could do that. But again, that's available with QBO Plus to make things a billable expense or reimbursable expense. All right, so I enter this bill. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter the bill. If I wanted to post items on here, if I were using two-sided items like we talked about yesterday in the second webinar of this series, I could put my items right down here. I'm just going to go ahead and do save and close. So we've entered a bill. Now I have two different choices for how I want to pay that bill. I could come up here and let's click on the search box and just open that bill. If I wanted to pay just this bill, I could open this up here and click in the upper right corner, see where it says make payment in the upper right corner. So you can pay one bill at a time. Usually we're not doing that though. Usually we enter bills all month long and then we pay bills like maybe twice a month. So under the Quick Create menu, I can choose Pay Bills. When I click on Pay Bills, this will show me all of my overdue bills. I can choose which account I want to pay it with, what's my starting check number if I'm going to print them or am I going to print them later. So you can do all that. Then I could filter these if I wanted to look for certain things or certain payees. If you have more than one payee, like let's say I had PG&E in here twice, it would create one check if I chose both of those to pay. So I could choose the ones that I wanted to pay. Let's say I don't want to pay Bob in full. So instead of the $500, maybe I'm going to pay him half now and half at the end of the month or something. You can just override the amount if you want to make a partial payment. Now I'm just going to click Save and Print because I don't actually want to print all these right now, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now when you are ready to print them, see where it has this information here? You're going to want to go through and do the lineup. So you're going to print a sample. So you'll see it says view and print the sample. You're going to go through and make sure everything's lined up right. If it's not, you're going to say no, continue the setup. If it's done and aligned great, you'll say yes, I am finished with the setup. And then you could go ahead and print those. But again, I'm not going to print those here, okay? So that's how you pay your bills in bulk. But sometimes you might want to just write a check. Let's say somebody went to Costco and they just took a check with them and they wrote a check at Costco. So if I click on the check right here, it's just like with desktop. You could choose who it's to. Let's say this is a check to Brosnahan Insurance Agency. My account would be some kind of insurance. Let's choose workers' comp, and let's say it was $1,000. So if you have a manual check, you may not be printing them later. You may say, oh, I went out and it was check number or whatever. You put that actual check number in there. So you can enter manual checks just like in QuickBooks Desktop. If you have clients that are using paper checks, I do recommend you enter the check into QuickBooks first and let it match when it's downloaded from the bank. But what I do with most of my clients is I say stop writing paper checks. You should be using your plastic, either debit or credit cards, or make online bank payments. QuickBooks Online doesn't have the ability to send a payment out yet. That's coming. Intuit announced that at QuickBooks Connect last fall, but we don't know when that's coming. I don't know if it's going to be next month, 2 months from now, 6 months from now. We're not sure, but that will be coming. But for right now, you have to log into the bank's website, send that payment. And so when you're using your plastic or online payments, those things are going to download much better, and you're going to be able to add them from the downloads. Okay, so let's go ahead and save and close on this check here, because there's one other thing that you need to know about. With QuickBooks Online, when it comes to entering and paying for things, there's another option. We can enter an expense. When we enter an expense, we can choose how it was paid for. So let's say this was Chin's Gas and Oil. Did I pay for it with my debit card, in which case I would choose checking account, or did I pay it with my credit card, in which case I would choose MasterCard or Visa? Now, you can enter these things manually, but I really recommend if you have debit and credit card purchases, you let those transactions download and add or match or set up bank rules for them, like we talked about in session 2 or in our second webinar of the series. So go back and watch that one if you need to. What this one might be really helpful for is when you have expenses like an ATM withdrawal or some of those things, you might want to enter that. But I just try to get around doing manual data entry. I just try to get around that, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and save and close and just let it save whatever that was. All right, so the difference between entering and paying a bill, this is using accounts payable. Whoops, enter and paying bills is accounts payable. On the other hand, you could just write a check and do it in one step instead of the 2 steps here. You also could do a purchase order, just like with your estimates. A purchase order is non-posting, so I could go through here and enter a purchase order. One thing that I wanted to point out about this, let me pick somebody like Hicks Hardware. Let's say I went, oh good, I got lots of them down here. This purchase order, I'm not sure if it's pushed out yet, but it's coming in an update pretty soon. It was announced on the QBO blog that we will have the ability to have partial purchase orders. So if I create this purchase order, and let's say I receive my fountain and my sprinkler heads, but I didn't get the pipes and the pump yet, I could do a partial purchase order on just these 2 line items. So and it won't close out your purchase order. So if that's not available in your company yet, that is coming soon. Okay, because they announced it in, I don't remember, last month's QBO blog, I believe it was, so that will be coming soon, partial purchase orders. Here's where you would enter either a vendor credit or a credit card credit, and you could also print checks. Now, just like with our client center or our customer center, we have a vendor center with a money bar. Here's your vendor details. We could also do some batch actions. We also have the expense center, just like we did with our sales center. We've got an expense center here. So all of that is the same as we were talking about with the customers and everything. Okay. Somebody says, can my practice use QBO while servicing desktop clients? You can have both. You can have some desktop clients and some QuickBooks Online clients. So you can have both. I, though, have tried to get all my clients onto QuickBooks Online, and I won't accept any new desktop clients. I don't like working with desktop anymore. It's just no fun. It's too time consuming and it's too inefficient trying to get files from the clients and pass and backup files back and forth, or an accountant's copy, and then the client works in the wrong file, or they remove your restrictions so you can't import changes. You don't have any of those problems, or having the same version or the same year of QuickBooks as your client. You don't have any of those problems when you're working in QuickBooks Online. So I really, really like working in QuickBooks Online a lot better. All right, let's talk briefly about payroll as well. So when we're working with payroll, oops, I'm going to have to go into Larry's landscaping. Let's go into Larry's. So I'm going to switch out of Castle Construction, and I'm going into Larry's landscaping. I want you to notice how fast that was to go from one client to another. In QuickBooks Online, it's way faster to go from one client to another as compared to closing a desktop file and opening a desktop file. It's a lot faster. So here's Larry's landscaping where we've already turned on payroll. So in my employee area, I'm going to go ahead and click on Run Payroll. Let's say it's time to run my payroll. I could come through here and take a look, and I could review my employees. So I could see, does everything look okay? Shane Hamby had 30 hours. Whoops, wait a minute. Let's say he actually had 32. He called me and he said something was wrong on his time slip. You can make changes on here however you need to. So you can review this, like if you needed to add some paycheck tips on here, maybe they had $120 worth of tips that you need to put on there. You could go through and do some of that. You could edit over here if you needed to. So I'm taking a look. I'm changing, editing, whatever I need to do, and then let's review our payroll. Take a look. Let's see how everything looks. I'm getting ready to do 3 paper checks. It would tell you also if you had some that are direct deposit. It would let you know how many direct deposit and then how many paper checks and stuff. You can review it again if you need to. Over on the far right, you could edit. Once you submit the payroll, then it's going to go ahead and post that payroll and create those paychecks. And I don't have everything done in the setup here in the sample company. So for some reason, we didn't get everything in there. But what you would do then is you submit that payroll, and you could also then print those checks out that you needed to. Or if you did direct deposit, you can print pay stubs. You also then, under your reports area, once you've turned on payroll, you will have payroll reports out here. You'll see under Manage Payroll, you've got all these various payroll reports out there where you can go in and see your payroll summary that shows the details of every paycheck that you created. Maybe you want to look at your payroll tax liability to show those taxes that you're owing, payroll details, lots of different payroll checks out here that you're looking at. Okay, so you've got all of that there. Let me go ahead and launch the next poll question for you. All right, are you enrolled in one of the QuickBooks Pro Advisor Programs? Are you enrolled? And somebody says, can you do the job costing? And Lee, you've got a good answer there from Woody. You can pass through some of the stuff, but you can't get the payroll allocated to those jobs. So that's the limitation when it comes to job costing. All right, anything else that you guys see that I should be answering, make sure you guys are flagging those. But thank you to all of our helpers, Woody, Sarah, Leah, Brianna. We really appreciate you typing all these in. You guys are rocking it, keeping up good. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. So Sherry asked a question about on the bookmark bar, if I set it up while working on a particular client, will they have those bookmarks when they open their books? So I mentioned that the bookmarks will work when you go in and out of different clients. All right, so if I bookmark the chart of accounts and I'm in Larry's landscaping, that bookmark will work. If I go into Castle Construction, that bookmark will work, but my clients won't see that bookmark. It's user specific. So what you would need to do is actually, if you Google this or go to Firm of the Future, firmofthefuture.com, Heather Satterley wrote a blog post about how you can export and import those bookmarks. So you could export the bookmarks and import them for your client into their Chrome user because they are a Chrome user specific thing. It's not part of QuickBooks at all. That's actually just a Chrome tip that will help you when you're working with QuickBooks. So I think that's great. If a client makes a payment, is there any way I can see who they made it to so that I can classify it? You should be able to get in there and look at those details by opening those up. All right, here's a couple that they flagged. Can you limit the client as to how much of the payroll they can do? Unfortunately, Richard, there's no way to limit that says they can only enter hours and enter time, that they can't create and prepare the paychecks. But if you just talk to your clients and communicate with them, usually they're kind of scared anyway, and they don't want to do it. So just tell them, this is what I want you to do, and that's it. No more, I do the rest. And hopefully they will learn to do that. If you're doing everything for the client and you just want them to have reports access, you then could set them up as a reports only user. You also could set some people up as time tracking only, and those two users, reports only and time tracking only, are only available with QBO Plus. For an inventory-intensive business, such as plumbing remodel, QBO would not be recommended. If not, which one should be used? With plumbing, the question really is how much do they really have in inventory? How much inventory does your plumber really have? Is he carrying around toilets and sinks and faucets? No, probably not. He probably goes to the store and gets what he needs for a particular job. Now, I would imagine the plumber would have lots of supplies and materials on his truck, but is that really inventory or are those materials that are you used to do the job and supplies? Maybe you shouldn't be tracking them as inventory. And if he does go to the plumber supply house and he buys a toilet and a sink, that might be a billable expense, not inventory. You buy it and you pass it through to the client. You can mark it up to the customer. So you really, it sounds like me, need to do a little more analysis of what really is inventory and is not inventory, because a lot of plumbers don't truly have a lot of inventory. So you might want to check that out a little bit more. Now they may carry faucets in their thing, but focus on the big dollars. Focus on the high dollar amounts. Don't worry about little materials and supplies that they use to do the job. Focus on materiality on some of that. All right, 10 more seconds to finish that poll question because it's been up for quite a while. Okay. So somebody says, how are deposits made to the bank from the point-of-sale system for a restaurant recorded in QuickBooks? Karen, if you're using a system that integrates with QuickBooks Online, that's great. If not, what I'd encourage you to do, Karen, is Google Long for Success daily sales summary. Long for Success daily sales summary, and you'll find that. Also, Karen, if you go to my YouTube channel, Michelle Long CPA, all one word, Michelle Long CPA on YouTube, about a month or two ago, I did about a 10 to 15 minute video how to record daily sales summaries for restaurants, retailers, people who use a point of sale system or a cash register, how to get those summary sales into QuickBooks. Okay, so I'd encourage you to check those out. That will help you with that question because it's pretty in depth. I don't know if the Intuit helpers can type that fast. Okay. So we were talking about some of the reports. Oh, we were talking about payroll. Let's also talk briefly about reconciling. We went over this yesterday, so I'm just going to briefly mention it. Under the gear and reconcile, so at the end of the month, you're going to want to reconcile your accounts. You click on Reconcile Now. You enter your statement ending date. I'll enter February and put in the statement ending balance. Now, if you're working with the downloaded transactions, whoop, I didn't do any of them this time. Let me cancel that real quick and go download some of them. Actually, I'll leave it there. Let me go over here to this one and do transactions, banking. Let me just go through and accept a whole bunch of these real quick. All right, come on, get moving. Transactions and banking, I'm just going to go to this, this account where we can recognize a whole bunch of them. Let's choose them all at once. Batch, accept. Now let's go back to that reconcile window, and I'm going to do a refresh of my screen. Now you'll see a bunch of these have the little green icon, and they're marked off as having cleared. When you're working with download transactions, it will mark them as being cleared for you. So again, this is in the reconciliation window. You go through, double check that everything's marked off that cleared, and always make sure your difference is 0 down here at the bottom. Now, mine's not, but I'm going to go ahead and just force it so that I can show you where you're going to find your reconciliation reports and things. So right here, so you click to go into reconcile. This is where you access your reconciliation history in the reports. If I just click on one of these lines, it will give me that reconciliation history report. Then you also could click on any of these and drill down to those transactions if you need to. Okay, so that's where you're going to access your reconciliation history and reports. We talked about the auto adjustment over here. When your client forces the bank reconciliation, you're going to see that in the auto adjustment column. Also under the changes column, if your client changed the amount of a check or a deposit that was previously cleared, it's going to show up right here in the changes column, and you can click on it, drop down, and see which transaction they actually changed. Okay. So somebody says for the daily sales summary, can you provide the URL again? Janet, longforsuccess.com, daily sales summary. Also on YouTube, Michelle Long CPA, you'll find a video of how to do that. Okay? So for the daily sales summary, it's on my YouTube channel or it's on my website. So if you Google Long for Success daily sales, you'll find it. It should be at the top of the search results. And I'll help you find it here in a minute if you cannot find that. Now let's talk about some monthly reports that you might want to run. So under reports, we usually always want to run like a profit and loss and a balance sheet. So let's go ahead and create a profit and loss. And here's my basic profit and loss, but I like to do this year to date. So let's change it to this year to date. And I want to see my columns by month. So maybe I want to see a monthly. So I can do some basic customization right here and click Run Report. I also could go in and do some additional customization up here if I wanted to. Under Customize, I could change some things up here. I could divide it off by thousands. I could round it off to the nearest dollar. How do I want to show my negative numbers? I like parentheses, and I like them in red. Rows and columns, I could go through here and make some changes. I could add some additional columns if I wanted to do some comparisons of the current period to the previous period or the previous year. I could do a percent of income. I can filter for specific things that I might be looking for if I want a particular customer or a particular product or service. I also can customize my header and footer. If I want, instead of profit and loss, I might want to say profit and loss monthly. So you could go through here and do all these customizations. After you customize it, you get it the way you want, then you'll want to click on Save Customizations. Save Customizations. And I can add a group. Let's add a new group called Monthly. Let's do Monthly here. So I'm going to add a new group, Monthly. I could go ahead and share this with everybody if I wanted to, or I'm going to just leave it as is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to save a couple of reports that I want to send to my clients on a regular basis. So I've got this P&L, and I've customized that I want to send to my client. I also want to send them a balance sheet, but I want to show this balance sheet for, like, let's say a 3-year period, 02, 01, 2014. Let's say it's a 3-year balance sheet, so I might want to show it by years. Run the report. I could then show them a 3-year balance sheet. No, we don't have history out here for some of this, but you get the idea where we could do a 3-year balance sheet. And let's just change it. Well, that's all right. Let's leave the dates. I'm going to go ahead and save the customization, balance sheet, multi-year. Give it a different name. I'm going to add it to the monthly group and click Save. So I create some reports. And there's lots of reports that you might want to be looking at. Also, this company snapshot is really great. It's got lots of charts and graphs, especially, I don't know about your clients, but some of my clients don't read numbers on reports. They like a picture book. They like these charts and graphs. They like to see this stuff in a graph, and you can print these things out if you want to. You also, if you know how to do, like you could do save as, you could save it as an image. You could also, if you know how to do like snag it and screenshots, you can take pictures. So you can put this in a report for your client if you want to, or you can just bookmark this for them up here. So click the star in the upper right. And I don't want that whole name just there. I might just put snapshot. And so you can have that on their bookmark bar so they can access it quick and easy with one click. But you can see details on the P&L. Here's income, here's expenses, previous year comparisons for income and expenses. You've got customers who owe money. You've got vendors that you owe money to. All of this right here at a dash, it's kind of at a glance, it's kind of like a nice little dashboard for some of your clients. And a lot of times they do like these graphs. Okay, but what I was going to show you, let's go back into our reports. After I've customized and saved some of those reports, so under my custom reports, remember I created these two and I saved them to the group called monthly. Let's say I want to send this to my client every single month and I don't want to remember to do it. I can come in here and on the far right side of that group, I can click on Edit. And I can click here where it says Set the Email Schedule. I'm going to turn that on. I want this to happen every month. I want it to happen on the 10th day of the month. Is there an end date or not? So think about this. What we're doing, we're sending reports to people on a regular basis where we don't have to do anything. I don't have to open QuickBooks, log into QuickBooks. I don't have to do anything. When this date comes around, it's going to automatically do it. So for example, I like to send some people a weekly collections report. Maybe every Tuesday they will get the collections report so they can follow up with clients or customers who haven't paid their invoices yet. Maybe you want to send them the monthly reports so they look at them. When they get these reports, they're coming into their email. They don't have to go log into QuickBooks to create the report and look at it. So for some of our clients, they'll look at it in an email versus going into QuickBooks and creating and reviewing the report there. Also, if you had a board of directors, you could send them the monthly reports every month and you could set an end date. Let's say they had a 24-month term of office. You could put an end date on how often you wanted this to be. Let's say you use the, have you heard of the Ask My Accountant account? Well, I changed it to Ask Michelle. When they don't know what to do with something, put it to the Ask Michelle account, and I need to know what's in that account. So I set up a report for the details of that account this year to date, and I have it emailed to myself on a regular basis. For some clients, they're on a short leash. I'm looking at it weekly. Other clients, it might be monthly. Other clients, I might change it to quarterly. So I'll say monthly every 3 months because they're doing really good. I don't need to check it that much. So there's lots of ways that we can use the ability to automatically email these reports. So in here, you would put in the email address. I'm just making something up. Who do you want to send it to, what notes, and then what do you want to put on it? And if you want to attach the report as an Excel file, you can do that here. So you can do that here. Somebody says, can you send a group of reports in one email? Meryl, you can do that the way I'm showing you right now by creating custom reports and setting up the email schedule for this. You can do this right here. I could go ahead and do save and close. However, if, let's see, I have this balance sheet, let's go ahead and just open the balance sheet, I can email this one report here, but not multiple reports. I can print this one report here, and I could export this one report to Excel. I also could click on this gear, and if I wanted to see it more compact or more spread out, so how close together do you want things to be? So you have a few things that you can do. You can also export it to a PDF, but this is report by report. If you want to email multiple reports, you need to go through those custom reports that I just showed you and do it over there, that you can do that. All right, so hopefully that will help a little bit on some of that information. How are we doing on time? Oh, great. Let me go ahead and go back into my slides for a little bit, and then I'm going to save again. I'll save like the last 10 minutes for Q&A of additional things that you guys want me to go over. So, but let's talk a little bit now about the desktop apps that are available. Now, these are apps that you can use on Windows or Mac. So it's QuickBooks Online / QBOA, because it's one app that will allow you to access both QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Online Accountant. So it's one app. You can download the app for Windows, download the app for Mac. Allows you to kind of work faster because you can open it quickly. You can work within multiple windows. So it's called multiple windows in this app, as opposed to when you're in Chrome, it's tabbed browsing. One of the differences is the desktop app. So let's say I have 2 tabs open in Chrome. I've got an invoice on one window or tab, and I've got the profit and loss on another tab. If I save my invoice, I create a new invoice and I save it, the profit and loss won't update by itself. I have to refresh that screen. Usually there's like an F5 key, or you can hit the refresh button. You have to refresh the screen yourself. In this desktop app, if I have an invoice that I'm entering and saving in one window and I have the profit and loss in another window, it will auto refresh my profit and loss for you. Some people think it lets them work a lot faster and everything, and you can start where you left off. So let's just take a look. Oh, I thought we had screenshots of that desktop app. I guess we don't. The desktop app, I apologize, it looks just like you're in a browser, except it's a little bit different. You have the menus going across the top. So for example, if you click on Navigate, you'll see all the details of the left navigation bar. If you click on Create, you'll see all the details that are under the Quick Create menu. So it's using the top menu bar and has drop-down menus. So for those clients that were using QuickBooks Desktop and they were menus, they like to use the drop-down menus, they may prefer the desktop app as opposed to Chrome. However, if you're somebody like me and I loved my icon bar, you can't create an icon bar in that desktop app, but you can using the bookmark bar in Chrome. So there's different pros and cons to whether you want to use the desktop app or whether you want to use QuickBooks in Chrome. And so actually, I think it was about a year ago, I did a webinar with one of the Intuit product managers, and we actually, for an hour, it was a QB Power Hour webinar, we talked about the 4 different ways that you can access QuickBooks Online and enter things that will go into QuickBooks Online, and we demoed and showed them all to you. So you could use a browser like Chrome or Safari on your computer, your Windows computer or your Mac. Also from a tablet, you can use the Chrome on a tablet so that you can access almost 100%, almost, not all, on your tablet through a browser. You could use the desktop app right here that we were just talking about, or you could also use the QBO mobile app. So you go to the App Store, either iTunes or your Google Play or your Android, wherever you get your apps for that. You download the QuickBooks mobile app. It has more limited access on what you can do in it. For example, I can enter an expense, and I could put in my amount. I could select my vendor. I could assign it to a customer if I wanted to, assign it to a class, and all those things. And I can take a picture of my receipt, and it will be attached to that. So when that transaction comes into QuickBooks, let me just show you this, because I actually have done this. Let's go under Larry's Landscaping, under Atlanta Bread. When I was out presenting some of these live seminars, what I would do is I would go, and while somebody else would be presenting, like in this example it was MB. MB would be presenting how to enter the expenses and the purchases in QuickBooks. I would be sitting there. I'd get on my mobile app. So I did this on the mobile app while she was talking. I went in and I said I had an expense from Atlanta Bread and Bar. This happened to be on January 18th, so I made my amount for 1818. I assigned it to a customer. I assigned it to a class, and then down here under the attachment, I didn't really have a receipt from Atlanta Bread and Bar, so I took a picture of the classroom of all of the attendees. So you can see here, I was sitting up on the front, in front of the group while MD was presenting. I took a picture of everybody. So you can attach that receipt. So while she was talking, I did this, and it synced, and then she could see it in QuickBooks on her computer. So your mobile app is a little bit more limited. I couldn't enter bills and pay bills on my mobile app. I can't see all my reports on my mobile app. But it's great for those people who are in the field to enter an expense. They can enter a sales receipt, like if Craig's getting paid out on the job. If they're using QuickBooks Payments, he can also receive the payment right there on the spot. There's something that will integrate with your phone where you can take the credit card payment with a chip or a swipe. So it's really great to be able to use the mobile app, especially for those people that are out in the field. So again, let me just show you this. If you go to YouTube, YouTube, let me go to it in my other browser because it comes up right away. This is my normal browser, YouTube. It should pop up pretty quickly. Go into my channel. So it's YouTube/Michelle Long CPA. Back here, I believe it was about a year ago. So if I go under videos, scroll down a little bit. Where was it? I will have to find it. I don't see it. Right here it is. So it was 10 months ago. QB Power Hour, options for accessing QuickBooks Online. This is the one where we went through and showed you all four. So I actually plugged in and demonstrated the mobile app. I demonstrated it from my iPad. We demonstrated the desktop app, and there's also a chart in there that talks about the pros and cons. You may prefer to use Chrome on your computer, but your client may prefer to use the desktop app. So you need to know about these different options and help your clients to kind of determine which one's right for them. Here's that daily sales summary that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Gosh, that was longer than I thought. That was 5 months ago. So you can go out and check some of those videos out. Also, I will be posting the fundamentals out here. Intuit is posting it on their YouTube channel as well. So all of those recordings will be available to you. Okay? All right. So let me see what questions we had. Can we attach an invoice while entering invoices on QuickBooks Online, not using the phone app? I think you mean, can we attach like a receipt or something? You wouldn't attach an invoice to an invoice. But so let's say I'm in here, I'm in Craig's Design, and I'm going to enter a expense or a check. Any transaction, down in the bottom right corner, you can attach something to that transaction. So for example, if I'm creating an invoice for Intuit, I can attach an Excel file that has my expense report. I can attach my my receipt for my airfare, the receipt for the hotel. I can attach receipts, and then this is what's really cool. When I click Save and Send that invoice, I can choose to include the attachments. So that's pretty cool. I think that's great. So you can do that. Let me share one more tip with you that I didn't cover earlier, and this works with your dates. Whenever you're in a date field, and you guys might know this from the desktop, but if I want the beginning of the month, if I hit M, that takes me to the beginning of the month. Why does this think I'm in February? Let me do a T for today. There we go. T, today is March 8th. M is beginning of the month. H, end of the month. Y takes me to the beginning of the year. R, end of the year. So if you write these words out, month, week, year, today, the beginning letter, month, week, year, beginning letter, and ending letter. Beginning of the month, end of the month is M for beginning, H for end. Y, beginning of the year, R, end of the year. T would be today. And also, if you need yesterday, because I usually trick some people, and I say, okay, well, what would Y be? And I ask them right after I do today, and they say, yesterday, and I'm like, no, Y is year. For yesterday, you hit the minus key, and that will go backwards. Okay, so the minus and the plus key will move you forward and backwards. All right, so that's kind of cool. You don't have to remember those dates. And I'll tell you, that really saved me when I was teaching QuickBooks, like in London and in Australia, because their dates are backwards. Now, they tell me our dates are backwards. But like it would be 31/12 for year end instead of 12/31. And all I had to do was hit an R, and it would come up right. Or all I had to do was hit a T for today, and it would come up right. So that was really helpful to know those date shortcuts. All right, so somebody says, have you covered security issues, especially as a CPA? Marie, I'm not sure what security issues in particular you want to know about, but I can tell you this. Intuit Security is bank-level security. They spend millions and millions of dollars on data security, which is way more than we as accounting professionals can spend on our own security for our own servers and stuff. We don't have like biometric access into the data service center and things like that. Intuit has that multi-factor authorization where once you put in your username and password, you also have to enter the code that they text you and stuff. So Intuit spends millions and millions and millions on data security. None of us, at least I don't think, have that much money to spend on data security. So the reality is the data is actually more secure on Intuit servers than it would be on our own. Also, when you consider a QuickBooks desktop file, because I have some people say, well, I don't want it on the internet, I'm going to use the desktop. A QuickBooks desktop file is the most vulnerable and the most easy to hack. All right, it's the most easy to hack and the most vulnerable. That's one reason why Intuit started implementing the complex password that you have to change all the time, and it upsets so many people, but it's because those files are so vulnerable. They are very vulnerable to being hacked. So just keep that in mind, okay? So hopefully that helps. Okay, other questions that you might have. Somebody says, where were the shortcuts again? So let me just encourage you to do this. Long for success, keyboard shortcuts. If you Google long for success, keyboard shortcuts, that is going to show you all of them. I think Brianna gave you the Control-Alt question mark. That will give you that list of the ones within QuickBooks, but then there's also the date shortcuts. There's also a calculator kind of shortcut. So if you Google long for success, keyboard shortcuts, in here, you're going to see all of those. When you hit Control-Alt question mark, it's going to show you all of these. But here's also like the calculate shortcut, the date shortcuts. Oh, also how you can zoom in and out. If you do Control+, it makes things bigger. Control- makes things smaller. And that's true whether you're in QBO Plus or you're in a regular, like I'm just on my website here. It's just a regular screen. Control+ or minus will zoom in and out on things for you. Then here's also the one-click trick on how you can create a bookmark bar. And then here's the link to that video that can show you how to find that stuff. Okay, so long for success, keyboard shortcuts. Actually, let's just copy this and put this in here for you so you can copy and paste that. That should take you to it. Send to all. There you go. Let me show you that calculating shortcut that I mentioned. Let me pull up an invoice here because this is kind of fun. Sometimes, quick create, let's go into an invoice. Let's say I want to do a quick calculation. So let's say this under quantity, let's say I want to do 2 times 10. If I do 2, the asterisk, and then you get a little error message, don't worry about it. Ignore the little error message. 2 times 5, tab. It will calculate for me. So again, let's clear that out for you. I'm going to put 2 asterisk for the times, 2 times 5, tab. Ignore the little error message that comes out, and that will do calculations for you. So, let's say you have 500 times a 2% times 0.02, and it, whoops, tab, I hit the space key, and it will calculate those things for you, okay? So that's kind of a calculator shortcut as well. So again, once I learned a bunch of these navigating shortcuts, then I got used to using them, then I really loved QuickBooks Online because I realized how much I could use it faster and more efficiently than QuickBooks Desktop. Another thing that I really like to have, since I'm working in the browser all the time, I don't like always going up and hitting the back key up here, the back key or the forward key, which, by the way, here's another little helpful tip. If you right-click on that back key, the forward and back button, if you right-click on that, you could then choose, oh, I want to go all the way back to this one. And you could choose where you want to go back to. So right-click on it, and you also could right-click on the forward button. So say I want to go back into that expense. So you can right-click on those. But the other thing is I like the forward and back button on my mouse. So I made sure when I bought a new wireless mouse, and it's just one of these from Logitech, but I've got one with the back and forward button, so you can see I can move backwards and forwards through screens without going up to the forward and back button. All right, so that was kind of handy. Okay, so another tip for you. All right, additional questions that you guys might have. I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and go through the ending slides, and then I'll do the final poll question and additional questions that you might have. So, oh, we forgot to talk about apps. There are, gosh, last count there were over 400. I think MB counted one time while we were presenting, and I think she counted 426 apps at apps.com. So again, that's at apps.com. There's over 400 apps that will integrate with QuickBooks Online that help you enhance the features and functionality. For example, if you need more in-depth time tracking, if you need to approve time and things like that, you might want to look at something like T-Sheets. Bill.com allows you to manage accounts payable where people can approve that bill for payment. Many of these will give you a free account or discounts as a Pro Advisor. For example, T-Sheets gives you a free account. Is it Fathom or Spotlight? I can't remember now. I think it's Fathom that gives you one, but a couple of other ones that will give you free accounts. So check those out. You can learn some more about apps a little bit more in the advanced certification, but really the biggest thing is determining the needs of your clients. And I've got some YouTube videos out there on that as well. And we are covering some of the third-party apps on some of our QB Power Hours, so you might want to check out some of those as well. Discuss the mobile app that's available for your iPhone or your Androids. And again, I demonstrate that app on that one video that I did 10 months ago. It said options for accessing QuickBooks Online. The mobile app is free. It is included with your QuickBooks subscription. All right, so yes, your clients can be out in the field entering some transactions, and they're syncing with QuickBooks Online. So if you're in the office, you're going to see that information. Okay, here's the information again for support, help, and additional resources. So remember, subscribe or not subscribe, but go check out that QBO blog on a regular basis. QBO blog, they update QuickBooks every month. You'll want to go check that out. And then again, if you haven't already, make sure you sign up for QuickBooks Online Accountant. You've now completed fundamentals training if you did parts 1 and 2. If you missed those, go back and watch those again. The recordings, I'm going to be posting them, and they'll also be on the Intuit YouTube channel. You'll also get a link to today's recording in an email shortly after the webinar. And then I do encourage you, especially if you're working with multiple clients, get certified. Get QuickBooks Online certified. Take that certification training. There's live webinars just about every week, or you can do it self-study, and then work on getting your first few clients. Okay, work on getting some of your first few clients. Somebody wanted the slide with the help numbers again. There those are. Somebody said, where do we register for QB Power Hour? It's at qbpowerhour.com. qbpowerhour.com. You can find that. And here is your last poll question. So if you needed those numbers to call, you have that slide in the slide handouts that you got. So you will have that slide in your handout there. All right. What is the best data management app? Vanessa, I'm not sure what data management you're trying to do. Are you trying to manage accounts payable? Are you trying to manage your invoices? Are you trying to import and export transactions? I'm not sure. That was a little too vague. If you want to type in some more details, I would try to answer that question for you. Okay? If I buy the desktop version, does the client need to buy the desktop at all? Well, you know, Woody had a great answer there. Why would you buy desktop if your clients are using QuickBooks Online? You don't need desktop if you're using QuickBooks Online. However, if you've got a client using QuickBooks Desktop, then yes, both of you need to purchase QuickBooks Desktop. So each user must have their own subscription. Okay, with QuickBooks Online, you and the client can work in there together with that same subscription. Do you have a suggestion on a direct deposit app to use to pay contractors? Rosalind, there's several of them out there. Bill.com allows you to make online payments to your vendors or subcontractors. Bill and Pay is one that allows you to make those online payments. Also, you might even just check with your bank. A lot of banks allow you to go in and enter an online payment, which would be made, pushed out, and then you could download that into QuickBooks. And also, Intuit announced that that's going to be coming soon for QuickBooks Online. Now, soon, I'm not sure how long that is, whether it's a month, 2 months, 6 months, or a year, but they announced at QuickBooks Connect that that's coming down the road. Okay? Very good. Oh, great. Somebody says, thank you, really learned a lot, and we'll look out for part 1 on YouTube, which I missed. Yes, I will post all of those on my YouTube channel. They're also on the Intuit YouTube channels. Where can we submit questions we may have? Well, Miriam, hopefully you've been typing them into this question box all throughout this webinar. If you have additional questions, if you're a Pro Advisor, remember we have our wonderful customer care people that are in Tucson, Arizona. Also, you can submit questions out on Facebook, on the QB Power Hour Facebook group, or my LinkedIn group. If you want to ask some questions of your peers, there's always lots of people out there to help you with that as well. All right, if you need CPE, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds on that poll question. Go ahead and answer that. You guys have been great for the last couple of webinars and joining me today. I really appreciate it. Again, I will be posting these recordings, and you'll get a link to today's recording and a follow-up email within a few hours after this webinar. And you can look for webinars 1 and 2 out on the YouTube channels for myself and Intuit. So check those out. Thank you for joining us. And remember, make sure you go ahead and work on that certification as well. That's a very good next step. And I hope to see you on future webinars, either with Intuit's webinars or the QB Power Hour. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll here. Thank you guys all for joining us. It was great. Don't forget, QuickBooksTrainingEvents.com is where you can find lots of those free webinars every month. And then the tours in the various cities will be starting up again in May. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.